You feel like you got good value with Ebanks, who's projected in some drafts like a late first rounder?
Yeah, we do. And, you know, we did project him higher in the draft. You know, our personal rankings, we thought he'd be drafted much higher than 43. So we were surprised that he was still there at 43. So we're pleased.
Mitch, what stands out most about his game in terms of fit for what you have here with the Lakers?
Well, he's a small forward, and he's an athletic small forward. You know, he's a good defensive player, has potential to grow as a player. He's got a really good upside. You know, with Luke's back, you know, we're not sure what the future holds, you know, for him. You know, he struggled this year, and, you know, to his credit, came back and was available during the playoffs, but he really struggled. And he's going to devote the summer to rehabilitation. But, you know, if Luke can't really make a contribution next year, we thought we had to get somebody to back him up. And that's not to say that Devin makes a team, or that if he does make the team, he's good enough to back up, you know, Ron Artest. But it is a young player at this position that we may need some help at.
What does he bring defensively?
Well, he's active. You know, he's long, athletic. You know, you can be a good defender when you have those types of qualities if you put your mind to it. You know, you probably can't be a great defender if you don't have those kinds of characteristics to start with.
He said he takes defense very seriously. Is that something that's evident when you watch him play?
I'm not sure if that's one thing that jumps out at you. I think you'll like his, you know, his athleticism. You know, he's got a lively bounce to his step. Very active, you know, versatile player, perimeter player. You know, he'll be exciting from time to time. But once again, he's a very young player. And, you know, at that age, you know, you're drafting a player that you hope gets better.
On paper, he seems to be a lot like Trevor with certain characteristics he had. Is that a fair assessment, do you think?
Yeah, and in fact, somebody else upstairs said that. I'm not sure, you know, if it was one of the scouts or, you know, somebody else that was wandering through the office, but it wasn't the first time I heard it. You know, they're similar in a lot of ways. I think Devin may be, you know, might be taller, but they might be the same size, very similar. I think Devin may be able to shoot the ball a little bit better than Trevor did when he came out of college. And Trevor, when he was with us, got to the point where he can shoot the ball really well. He worked at his game. So if I had to pick one, you know, dramatic difference, I would say that Devin is more rounded, you know, maybe a better offensive player than Devin was coming out of college. When Devin came out of college, he's primarily, you know, Trevor, primarily a defensive player. And he worked at his game 2 or 3 years, and he got to the point where, you know, he could make a shot, and he was good at it. I think Devin is probably more rounded right now.
Some reports indicate he had some off-court issues with teammates. Was that a concern at all?
We looked into, you know, his background, you know, at the University of West Virginia, and a lot of players, young players in particular, go through times when, you know, they have to work on their character a little bit without going into great detail. But once again, he's a young player, and he's a talented player, a player we got to know. We interviewed him, you know, so we do know him. And at 43, you know, you're looking to draft NBA talent.
Do you guys like the idea that he grew up knowing Lamar, knowing Ron, that maybe a support system already built in?
It's probably not a bad thing. You know, that was something that came up during the interview. And then a month ago, when we got back from, I guess, Chicago pre-draft camp, I talked to, you know, Ron about it, and he said, yeah, I know the kid, he's a young kid, and, you know, kind of looked up to him a little bit. So, more so than Lamar and Ron, I think a young player being on a veteran team with the character that we have on this team, you know, with Powell, Derrick, Kobe, and Lamar, you know, for beginners, I think that's a strong group, you know, for a young player that's developing to be around.
Did you work him out? Or just have the interview?
The interview was in Chicago this year. So, but he's, you know, we've seen him play many times. He was in Chicago Skills, he was in Minnesota workouts, so we're very familiar with him.
Mitch Caracter had the transfer year where he sat out and then had a better junior year at UTEP.
Right.
I suppose, what were your general thoughts on him and him being available at 58?
Well, once again, you know, he's a player that we didn't think would be available. We had him going a little bit earlier in the draft. And, yeah, we felt we had a choice between 2 or 3 players that were still standing on the board. You know, a lot depends on your team's makeup and who you draft at 43. And unless there was another small forward who was just as good as Devin, you know, and then you gotta say, well, why maybe, or better, then we probably wouldn't pick another small forward. So we looked for help in the backcourt and the front court. And of the 2 or 3 guys that were on the board, we felt most comfortable with him.
You basically had, what, 45 seconds to make that decision, or 2 minutes?
Well, we got to the point where there were 3 guys that we were comfortable with. So we knew in advance that we were gonna get one of the 3, and we didn't know which one of the 3. So you actually had more time than you think to talk about it. And, you know, once again, a young player who struggled at Louisville, you know, made a decision to transfer, and got into great shape, much better shape. He still has to work on his conditioning, but he's, you know, lively, and he can shoot the ball a little bit as well with some range, predominantly, you know, 12 to 15 feet. Good rebounder, you know, listed at 6'9.5", you know, that's probably a little generous. But, you know, for a team that's, you know, with our roster makeup, in other words, we haven't really added a young player in a while, and we've got a lot of free agents this year, so you're actually looking for a guy, too, that hopefully can make your team and give you something young to go with going forward. So we're hoping one or both of those guys can do that.
Mitch, explain again how the second round works as far as signing guys. First round guys are slotted into contracts basically by, you know, number in the draft. How do you do, second round's not that way, is that accurate?
Yeah, second round, everybody gets paid the same. You know, unless you use one of your exceptions
Right.
to give the guy a raise, and the only time you do that is if you wanted to sign him to a 3 or 4 year deal. But typically you sign, you know, players in the second round, you know, to a 1 year deal, maybe a second year. So I think the first year is about 470, and then the second year in a deal might jump up to 800. But whether you're drafted 31 or 60, it's the same. And the only way to get above that number is to use one of your exceptions.
So is it must be appealing to, say, lose one of your free agents, sign one of your picks, and then be able to trim your payroll for next season. Get a little lower on.
Well, you're going to pick the best player. I mean, the salary difference is not that dramatic. You know, to keep a player that you're not happy with. So you're going to keep you're going to keep the best player. You know, or if it's a push, yeah, you're going to keep the player that's maybe younger and you want to take a look at. But you're not going to keep a player because he makes 470 over a player you like better because he makes 800.
I think I was going at it the other way.
Right.
But yeah, I understand.
You had said during the exit interview that backcourt was probably the most pressing issue heading into the offseason. Did you guys not feel that there was anyone available to draft either 43rd or below that could
Yeah, there were 3 players there. 2 of them were front court players and one was a backcourt player.
Did you think that they would be able to actually make the rotation? Or
You know,
like in terms of really trying to just help yourself
you know,
during the
I
offseason.
mean, statistically, you guys can look at the drafts and, you know, trying to be as optimistic as possible. You know, I think there's a chance that players, you know, drafted in the 40s make your team. It's unlikely that they're in a rotation or make a contribution.
Right.
It happens though. And it's even more unlikely that players that are drafted in the 50s, you know, make your team or in the rotation. So, you know, that's not to say that, you know, we don't think one of these guys or both of them can make the team, But if you analyze the draft in the last 10 years and just statistically, that's kind of where it shakes out. So, we hope to have them both playing in the summer league. That's when they'll get their first look. And if they perform well, they'll be invited back, to training camp. Perhaps with a contract that provides for some security. But that's, weeks from now, that kind of decision. And then typically they'll have to make the team in training camp.